He wasn't supposed to look at me like that. Not in a room full of millionaires, marble floors, and champagne bubbles clinking against crystal glass. Not when we were standing on opposite sides of a priceless Monet, both of us ready to strike the other down with a single raise of a bidding paddle. And definitely not with those eyes cold as steel, but carrying a flicker of something far more dangerous. The first time I saw Adrian Hale, I thought, God help me, I've already lost. He was tall, magnetic, every inch wrapped in confidence that felt rehearsed and devastatingly natural at the same time. The kind of man who could order a room to burn down just by raising an eyebrow. And yet, in that unbearable silence before the auctioneer called for the next bid, I felt it had impossible gravitational pull. I raised my paddle higher, breaking eye contact. My chest tightened like I had just agreed to gamble away not money, but something far more intimate. And that was the moment I realized my enemy wasn't the man across from me. It was myself. My name is Ethan Carter. I've always been told I have two things working against me. I care too much and I can't keep my mouth shut. Neither has been particularly helpful in the cutthroat world of New York's art auctions. I wasn't born into this universe of old money and gallery dynasties. My father was a history teacher, my mother a nurse. We had dinner on chipped plates, and my first sketchbooks were hand-me-down office pads. But art was where I breathed. I worked my way up, hustling in dusty galleries, convincing cynical collectors that beauty could still surprise them. That night at the Hale auction house, I had one goal: win the Degas study for my client, a restless philanthropist with too much money and too little patience. It should have been routine. It should have been just another evening where my heart raced to the rhythm of the auctioneer's gavel. But then Adrian stepped into the room. He didn't just walk, he arrived. His presence shifted the air, every conversation bending subtly in his direction. A dark suit fit him like sin itself, and his eyes swept across the room with clinical detachment. He wasn't here to admire or to lose himself in the beauty of brushstrokes and shadows. He was here to conquer. I had heard the name before. Adrian Hale, heir to one of the most powerful art conglomerates in the country. His family owned galleries from New York to London, and rumor had it he never lost a bid. People said he didn't just collect art, collected victories. So when the Degas sketch was revealed, I should have expected him to raise his paddle. I should have known he'd make it a game. But nothing prepared me for the way he looked at me as he did it, like he was daring me to bleed in public. The auctioneer's voice rose. 5 million? Do I hear 6? I raised my paddle, pulse hammering. 6 million from bidder 32. Adrian's gaze cut across the room, finding mine. He tilted his paddle, effortless. 7 million from bidder 45. It was reckless. My client had set a ceiling of 10 million. But the stubborn knot in my chest tightened. I wasn't going to fold in front of him. 8 million. 10, Adrian said, his voice steady, like numbers didn't matter to him. A murmur spread across the room. The auctioneer practically glowed. 10 million to bidder 45. Do I hear 11? I knew I should stop. I knew. But my hand rose like it belonged to someone else. 11. His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile, more like acknowledgement or promise. And then, casually, he lifted his paddle again. 12. Silence. The gavel came down like a gunshot. Sold. 12 million to bidder 45. I'd lost. But the strange thing was, it didn't feel like failure. It felt like the opening move of a war I hadn't realized I was already in. After the auction, I should have left. My client would be furious, but at least I could prepare excuses. Instead, I lingered by the marble staircase, watching him from a distance. Adrian Hale spoke to no one unnecessarily, but people circled him like satellites desperate for orbit. His laugh rare, quiet still carried across the room. And then, impossibly, his eyes found me again. I froze, heart kicking against my ribs. He said something to the man beside him, then walked straight toward me. Carter, he said, his voice smooth, deliberate. You know my name. Of course. You've been making noise in all the wrong places. Stirring up clients, challenging the established order. He studied me like one would study a painting, angles, shadows, vulnerabilities. You don't belong here. I bristled. Funny. I was thinking the same about you. His gaze sharpened, but the corner of his mouth betrayed a flicker of amusement. You lost, he said. Or maybe I just let you win. For the first time, Adrian laughed, low and startling. It was like being punched in the chest with velvet. Careful, Carter. That kind of arrogance gets people destroyed. And with that, he walked away, leaving me shaken and furious and unbearably intrigued. The weeks that followed only deepened the madness. Every auction I attended, Adrian was there. Sometimes he won, sometimes I did, but the bidding was never just about art anymore. It was about us. A silent duel played out in front of wealthy strangers, each paddle raised like a secret message. People began whispering. Carter and Hale. The rivalry. The spectacle. Some nights I hated him. Some nights I hated myself more for lying awake, remembering the exact shade of his eyes under the golden lights. It wasn't supposed to mean anything, but meaning has a way of bleeding through the cracks no matter how much you fight it. The breaking point came one rain-slick night in Chelsea. I was leaving a gallery, soaked to the bone, when a sleek black car pulled up beside me. The window rolled down and there he was. Get in, Adrian said. I should have told him to go to hell. Instead, I opened the door. Inside smelled like leather and faint cologne. He didn't look at me right away, just signaled to the driver. The city blurred outside. Why am I here? I asked. Because you're reckless, he said. And because you intrigue me. My laugh was sharp, nervous. You don't get to play God just because your family owns half the art world. Finally, he turned his head, his gaze locking onto mine. In the dim light, his expression was unreadable, except for the faint tension at the corners of his mouth. You really think this is just about art? Something in my chest twisted. Isn't it? The car slowed, stopping in front of an unfamiliar townhouse. Adrian leaned closer, his voice dropping. Come inside, Carter. Let's stop pretending. I followed him in. God help me, I followed. The townhouse was pristine, all glass and steel, with canvases hung like quiet sentinels. I turned, ready with 1,000 defenses, but they collapsed the moment his hand brushed mine. Just a fleeting touch, accidental or deliberate, I couldn't tell. But the heat was undeniable. This is insane, I whispered. Yes, Adrian said softly, his lips closer than I'd realized. And inevitable. And then, finally, he kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't tentative. It was years of unspoken tension crashing together. A war declared in the press of his mouth against mine. My hands found his jacket, pulling him closer, as if I could memorize the taste of every bad decision in that single moment. When we broke apart, breathing ragged, his forehead rested against mine. You're going to ruin me, I said. Or save you, he murmured. The truth was, I didn't know which terrified me more. The morning after, sunlight spilled through the wide glass windows of Adrian's townhouse, pooling across my clothes strewn on the floor like discarded truths. I woke up not to the sound of alarms or the city's chaos but to silence, broken only by the distant hum of Manhattan outside. For a moment, I let myself believe it was simple two men, one night, desire finally unchained. But when I turned, seeing him already awake, dressed, sipping coffee with that same cold elegance, reality slammed back into place. Good morning, Adrian said without looking at me. I pulled the sheet tighter around myself, suddenly defensive. Do you always start your mornings like this? Winning a war, then sipping espresso. He set the cup down, his eyes finally meeting mine. This wasn't war. No? Felt like it. Adrian's expression shifted, something flickered, too brief to name. Don't confuse what happened. Last night doesn't change anything. My chest tightened. Right? Back to enemies. Then, he rose, adjusting his cufflinks, every motion precise, controlled. Not enemies. Rivals. There's a difference. I laughed, bitter. Tell that to my client when he finds out I let you crush me in every auction we've been at lately. Ethan, his voice carried my name like it wasn't supposed to. like it hurt him too. But he didn't finish. He just picked up his jacket. I hated myself for the sting in my chest when he walked out, leaving me alone with the scent of coffee and the memory of his lips. The weeks blurred after that night. We didn't speak about it, not openly. We still met across auction halls, still raised our paddles like weapons, still locked eyes with that unbearable electricity. But beneath every clash, something pulsed louder. Some nights he would call. No words, just silence on the line, until I whispered, "Where?" And he gave an address. We'd meet in secret, stolen nights in penthouses, anonymous hotel rooms, even once in the darkened back room of a gallery while the city breathed above us. It was madness. It was inevitable. And it was killing me. One evening, after a brutal loss at an auction where Adrian outbid me by $15 million without blinking, I stormed out into the rain. He followed. "Ethan, wait." "No," I snapped, spinning on him. The streetlight cast shadows across his face, making him look almost inhuman. "You don't get to own me out there and then come to me at night like nothing matters." His jaw tightened. "It does matter, does it? Because to me, it feels like I'm just another piece of art for you to collect. Something you can buy, use, then hide away so no one knows." Adrian stepped closer, water dripping from his hair onto his suit. Yet he didn't flinch. "You think I could hide you? You've been under my skin since the first paddle you raised against me. I hate it. I crave it. You infuriate me, Ethan Carter." His voice cracked on my name, and that broke me more than the rain or the city ever could. I grabbed his lapels, pulled him against me, kissed him with all the fury and need tangled inside me. And when he kissed back, desperate, almost broken, I realized the truth neither of us wanted to say. This wasn't rivalry anymore. It was something else. Something that could destroy us both. But the world doesn't let men like us have secrets forever. It started with whispers. A journalist spotted us leaving the same gallery minutes apart. A rival dealer swore they saw Adrian's hand brush mine in a bar. Nothing concrete, nothing that could be proven. But in New York's art world, rumor spreads faster than any scandal. My client, Mr. Whitaker, was the first to confront me. "You've been distracted, Ethan," he said, pacing his penthouse office. "Losing bids you should have won. Letting Hale play you like a puppet. And now these stories, about you two being involved." My throat went dry. "They're lies." Whitaker's eyes narrowed. "For your sake, they better be. Because if the board suspects you're sleeping with the enemy, you'll be finished. And so will I." I left his office shaking, fury and shame colliding. I wanted to call Adrian, to scream, to demand why everything had to be so impossible. Instead, I stayed silent, drowning in fear of what we'd already set in motion. Adrian, of course, didn't care, or pretended not to. "They can't touch me," he said one night as we sat on his balcony overlooking the city. "My family owns half the galleries in this country. Let them gossip." "That's easy for you to say," I snapped. "You have power, money, a last name that shields you from everything. I don't. If Whitaker drops me, I'm nothing. Just a kid from Queens who thought he could play with giants." For once, Adrian didn't argue. He just looked at me, and in his silence I saw the truth. He hated it too. Hated that his world and mine didn't fit together, no matter how much we wanted them to. But he reached for my hand anyway, and I let him hold it, even as the city burned beneath us. The climax came the night of the Winter Gala glittering event where the richest of New York gathered to flaunt diamonds, power, and, of course, art. I shouldn't have gone, but Whitaker demanded my presence, and the chance to prove myself was too tempting. I dressed in my best suit, walked into the ballroom, and pretended my chest wasn't a battlefield. And then I saw him, Adrian, in a black tuxedo, surrounded by patrons and collectors, his every move commanding attention. For a moment he didn't see me, and I let myself admire him freely, without fear, without rivalry. Just the man who ruined me and saved me in equal measure. But then his eyes met mine, and everything unraveled. Later that night, After too much champagne and too many fake smiles, I stepped onto the balcony for air. And there he was, waiting as if he knew I'd come. "You shouldn't be here," I said. "Neither should you." We stood in silence, the city glittering below us. Then he stepped closer, his voice low. "Do you ever think about what it would be like if we weren't rivals?" The question gutted me. Every damn day. And before I could stop myself, I kissed him right there at the gala where anyone could see. For once, I didn't care. I didn't care about Whitaker, the whispers, the ruin. I cared about him. The sound of gasps behind us broke the spell. We tore apart, turning to see half a dozen guests staring, wide-eyed, champagne glasses frozen midair. It was over. The fallout was immediate. Whitaker fired me the next morning, his voice cold over the phone. "You embarrassed me, Ethan. You embarrassed yourself. Don't bother coming back." The papers feasted on the scandal. Hale heir and young dealer locked in forbidden affair. Commentators debated whether it was real or strategy. Every photo of us became evidence. For days, I hid in my apartment, phone buzzing with calls I refused to answer. I didn't know what Adrian was doing, if he was fighting back, or if he'd already decided I wasn't worth the damage, until he showed up at my door. I opened it to find him standing in the hallway, unshaven, exhaustion shadowing his eyes. For once, he looked human. "You think I care what they say?" he asked, voice raw. "Let them talk. Let them scream. I won't hide you anymore." "Adrian," my throat tightened. "I lost everything. Then take me instead." He stepped inside, cupped my face in his hands, and kissed me like it was the only truth left in the world. And for the first time, I let myself believe maybe love was worth the ruin. The days after Adrian came to my apartment felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, watching the waves crash below, knowing one wrong step would end me. I wasn't naive. I knew the scandal hadn't disappeared, that my name was still being dragged across tabloids and whispered through gallery corridors. But with him beside me, it was harder to care. We stayed inside for nearly a week. The world outside burned, but in my small one-bedroom apartment, we built something fragile, something terrifyingly real. He cooked badly. I painted again for the first time in years, and he watched, quiet, as though seeing me create was more valuable than the Monet he had fought me over. But the real world doesn't stay outside forever. On the 7th day, Adrian got the call. I was rinsing mugs in the sink when I heard his voice, sharp, clipped, carrying the weight of his family's empire. "I told you I don't care what the board thinks. This is my life, not theirs." Pause, then his tone hardened. "No, father, I won't apologize, and I won't leave him." When he hung up, his shoulders sagged, just slightly, but it was enough to crack the image of the untouchable man he projected. "They want me to end it," he said simply. I dried my hands on a towel. "And if you don't?" His eyes met mine, storm-dark. "Then I lose everything." The words punched the air out of me. His family wasn't just wealthy, they were the art world. Without their support, his influence, his reputation, his fortune could all crumble. "You can't," I whispered. "You've built too much. You've worked too hard." Adrian stepped closer, his hands finding my face with aching tenderness. "I can lose everything, Ethan. Just not you." It should have felt like salvation. Instead, it felt like a curse, because love shouldn't have to cost this much. The fallout escalated quickly. Collectors began pulling pieces from Hale-owned galleries. Rumors of investors withdrawing spread. Adrian's family issued cold, sterile statements that denied everything, distancing themselves from their own son. And me? I was already a ghost. Whitaker had made sure my name was mud. No gallery returned my calls. No client wanted the risk of being associated with me. It was as though I'd been erased. One night, sitting on my floor with empty takeout boxes around us, I finally broke. "This isn't fair," I said, choking on the words. "I dragged you into this. If it weren't for me—" "Stop." His voice cracked like thunder. "But I couldn't. You were untouchable, Adrian. You had power, control. And now look at you. You're losing everything, and it's because of me." He grabbed my wrists, forcing me to meet his eyes. No, Ethan. I'm losing because I finally decided to fight for something real. Do you understand? You're not my weakness. You're the only reason I've stopped being hollow. His words cut me open, and when he kissed me, fierce and desperate, I knew he meant it. But love alone doesn't pay debts or silence gossip. And one stormy night, when Adrian was in a meeting trying to salvage what he could, I made the decision that nearly broke me. I packed a bag. When he returned, dripping rain onto my carpet, I was already at the door. No, his voice was sharp, panicked. You're not leaving. I have to. My throat ached. Don't you see? If I'm gone, they'll stop. They'll forgive you. You'll get your life back. His face twisted, raw and unguarded. Ethan, don't you dare make me live in a world where I have everything but you. Tears blurred my vision. You'll survive. You always survive. I pressed a kiss to his mouth, soft, lingering, final, and walked away before I could shatter completely. The weeks that followed were a blur of loneliness. I fled New York, crashing at a friend's tiny house upstate. I painted until my hands blistered, poured everything I couldn't say into canvases no one would see. I avoided the news, avoided his name, but the world didn't let me forget. One morning, my phone buzzed with a headline sent by a friend. Adrian Hale defies family. I will not deny WHO I love. My hands shook as I read the article. Adrian had stood in front of cameras, the full weight of his family's empire behind him, and said my name. Said he loved me. Said he wouldn't apologize for it. The art world exploded. Some hailed him as reckless, others as brave. Investors fled, but new ones appeared, progressive patrons hungry for change. Galleries split down the middle. But through it all, his words remained, burning into me like fire. I will not deny who I love. 2 days later, he found me. I was in the middle of painting when his voice broke through the quiet. You really thought you could hide from me? I spun, brush falling from my hand. There he was, disheveled, exhausted, but more alive than I'd ever seen him. You shouldn't be here, I whispered. Then why do you look like you've been waiting for me? Couldn't breathe, couldn't move, until he crossed the room, pulled me into his arms, and kissed me like the weeks apart had been centuries. I meant it, he said against my mouth. Every word. I don't care what it costs. I choose you. And finally, I let myself believe him. Months passed. The storm didn't vanish, but it quieted. Adrian rebuilt, not on his family's terms but his own. He opened a new gallery, smaller, independent, dedicated to giving space to artists who had been overlooked. He asked me to cure it. The night of the opening, I stood beside him, watching as crowds filled the gallery, as my name appeared on the program next to his. For the first time in years, I felt seen, not as a scandal, not as a mistake, but as someone who belonged. Adrian slipped his hand into mine, subtle but unashamed. Worth the ruin? He asked softly. I looked at him, the man who had been my rival, my downfall, my salvation, and smiled. Every second. Later, when the gallery emptied and the city hummed outside, we stood together in front of one painting. A piece I had created during the weeks apart, a storm of color and desperation. It's called Ruin and Rescue, I said quietly. Adrian studied it, then glanced at me. It's us. I nodded, throat tight. Yeah, it is. He kissed me then, slow and certain, no audience, no pretense. Just two men who had fought like hell to stand together, finally unafraid. And for the first time, I realized we hadn't destroyed each other. We had saved each other. The night of the gallery opening should have been enough. The crowd, the applause, the quiet power of knowing we had survived. But the truth was, survival was just the beginning. Love, I learned, isn't just grand declarations or stolen kisses under glittering chandeliers. It's the morning coffee Adrian burned every single day because he refused to admit he couldn't make it right. It's the way I left notes tucked into his suit pockets before meetings, just to remind him that someone believed in him even when the boardroom tried to tear him apart. It was the quiet, unglamorous details that made us real. 3 months after the opening, Adrian's new gallery, our gallery, became the talk of New York. Not because it was the richest, but because it was raw, daring, different. We showcased artists who had been dismissed, ignored, told they weren't profitable. And people came. Collectors, critics, young dreamers with wide eyes and trembling portfolios. And Adrian, the man who once seemed carved from ice, stood in the center of it all, not as a conqueror, but as a believer. "You changed me," he told me one night as we locked up after a late exhibit. I shook my head. "You changed yourself. I just reminded you why." His smile then was soft, rare, like sunlight breaking through winter clouds. "I don't deserve you." I leaned in, kissed him gently. "Good, because I don't deserve you either. And that's how we'll make it work." Of course, not everything was easy. His family still refused to speak to him. Invitations to the old money galas stopped coming. Some collectors turned their noses up at his new gallery, calling it reckless, sentimental. But every time the doubt crept in, I remembered the night on the balcony when I told him I thought of life without rivalry every damn day. And I realized who had it now, and we weren't going to waste it. One crisp autumn morning, Adrian dragged me out of bed before dawn. "Where are we going?" I groaned as he shoved a travel mug of coffee into my hand. "You'll see," he said, maddeningly smug. We drove for hours, city skyline giving way to rolling hills painted in orange and red. Finally, he pulled into a gravel road leading to an old farmhouse surrounded by acres of open land. I blinked. "This is our future," Adrian said simply. The farmhouse was weathered, the paint peeling, the windows clouded with age. But when he unlocked the door and led me inside, I saw the bones of something beautiful. High ceilings, wide rooms, a place that could hold both art and life. "I bought it," he said, watching my reaction. "Not for me, for us. A place where we don't have to fight or prove or pretend. Just be." Tears stung my eyes before I could stop them. "Adrian, this is home," he finished. Then he kissed me in the middle of the empty living room, dust swirling around us like confetti. We spent weekends fixing the place up. I painted the walls while Adrian cursed at IKEA instructions. He insisted on planting a garden, even though neither of us had a clue what we were doing. The first time a tomato actually grew, you'd think he'd won another Monet. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't headline-worthy, but it was ours. And slowly, the noise of the city, of the art world, of scandal and gossip, faded into background hum. What mattered was this. Every night, no matter how tired, we ended the day together. His hand in mine, his steady breath beside me. His love sometimes fierce, sometimes clumsy, but always unwavering. The first winter in the farmhouse, a storm knocked out the power. We lit candles, wrapped ourselves in blankets, and opened a bottle of wine we had been saving for someday. "This is ridiculous," I laughed as we sat on the floor, shivering, sipping straight from the bottle. "Ridiculous is falling in love with your rival in front of half of Manhattan," Adrian said dryly. "This is peaceful." I leaned against him, my head on his shoulder. "Do you ever regret it?" He kissed the top of my hair, slow and certain. "Not once. Not ever." And I believed him. Spring brought new Lafido, the garden, to the gallery, to us. My paintings finally found their place on our walls, not hidden in sketchbooks or abandoned in closets, but displayed where love could live with them. Adrian curated exhibitions that critics called audacious and revolutionary. And though some nights the weight of it all nearly crushed us, we faced it together. One evening, after a long day, we sat on the porch watching the sun sink behind the hills. Adrian's hand found mine, his thumb brushing my knuckles absent-mindedly. "You know," he said, voice low, "I used to think love was weakness, that it distracted, destroyed, left you vulnerable. And now?" I asked. He turned to me, eyes soft, unguarded. "Now I know it's the only reason any of this means anything." My throat tightened. "Adrian." He reached into his pocket, and suddenly my world stilled. A small box, a trembling hand. His voice, uncharacteristically unsure. I don't need a gala or a gavel or my family's approval. All I need is you. So Ethan Carter, will you be my choice? Every reckless, impossible, beautiful day from here on out. The tears came before the words did. But when I found my voice, it was steady. Yes, I whispered. God, yes. We married quietly, in the farmhouse garden Adrian had stubbornly planted. Just a handful of friends, laughter echoing through the spring air, petals caught in the wind like blessings. No tabloids, no auctions, no spectacle. When he slipped the ring onto my finger, I realized that the boy who had walked into Hale auction house years ago hungry, reckless, desperate to prove himself was gone. In his place stood a man who had found something rarer than any Monet, more priceless than any Degas. Love. Not perfect, not easy, not without scars, but real. Years later, when people ask about Usho we met, how we survived, I never tell them the whole story. I don't tell them about the scandals, the betrayals, the nights we thought it would all end. I just tell them this. I fell in love with my rival, and it was the best mistake I ever made. And every time I say it, Adrian smiles, that rare, quiet smile, the one that still feels like sunlight breaking through clouds. Because in the end, he wasn't my rival. He wasn't my ruin. He was my rescue. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.